explaining how he created all the universe and all the universes and the millions and millions and billions and trillions and gazillions of stars out there. And that one little phrase and said, he created the stars too. And I always think, that's such a cool verse because it really speaks to the majesty of God and his power. But there's another phrase in here. In fact, I taught a little, my family has land up in Paris, Tennessee, and we used to go deer hunting up there all the time. And when we went deer hunting, it was a bunch of guys. It's like, in fact, Jim was one of the guys that used to go with us years ago. But, there'd be 15 or so guys up there. And my uncle was really, he would always say, we're probably the only deer camp around that's having a devotional, and which was pretty cool. But one night I led a devotional, and I did it on this very topic, and this phrase here, God remembered Noah. And, it kind of came back to me what I said that night during the devotional. So I'm going to cover chapter 8 and get Noah off the boat. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. So that's the title of it tonight. So I want to read a little bit, Genesis 8:1, but God remembered Noah. And I heard it phrased one time, kind of thank God for all the buts in the Bible. But God. We see that time and time again, but God, so he's always intervening, right? And he's always in control. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him on the ark. And he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. But God remembered Noah. So there are two perspectives regarding these four words. One of them is God's perspective, and the other one is Noah's perspective. Do you think God forgot? Or do you think he used that type of verbiage for us? He used it for us, right? So we're going to look at it from two different perspectives about God remembering Noah, because we always have different perspectives, right? I might see one thing my way, and you might see something your way. So let's take a look at God's perspective here. God never remembers anything because he has never forgotten anything. You ever thought about that? Yeah. So God, he never has to remember anything. He can look down, the past. He can look at the future. And he always knows it. Why? Because he's never forgotten anything. He's all-knowing, that's right. God knows everything immediately and eternally. So he knows the future, the past, the present. He knows everything. God has never learned anything. He's omniscient. You ever thought about that? He didn't have to go, wow, what's that mathematical formula? What's that new formula? That E equals MC squared thing, what is that? He already knew it. He created it, right? God is the creator. So he never had to learn anything because he's omniscient. He's all-knowing. God knew everything before the foundation of the world. When we think about this, we think of it in our minuscule minds of time. Right? The foundation of the world was God created time right at the very foundations of the world, right? He created time for who? For us, right? He's outside of time. He doesn't live in a time. Time means nothing to God. He created it for us. God put everything into its place. So God knows where everything should be, what order it should be in. We're the ones that what? We messed it all up, didn't we? God has never learned anything about the future. You know, he can look down that tunnel of time and see what, he doesn't have to look down there and see what's going to happen. You know, oh boy, is Trump going to get assassinated? He already knows, right? You know, I always said that nothing sneaks up on God's radar. It doesn't just show up there. He already knows it. Everything is happening according to his what? His plan and his will, right? So we get caught up in that. You know, we're the ones that get caught up in, oh no, what if he doesn't get elected? What's going to happen? Have y'all had that conversation? I have. If you're honest with yourself, you probably have too. But, you know, who's in control of all that? Whose ultimate plan is that? Right? You know, there's Jan Markell is one of the ladies I listen to on the radio a lot. Her ministry is eschatology, which is study of end times. And there's a phrase that she uses all the time. The world is not falling apart. It's falling into place. And I'm like, you know, that is so good because everything is coming together like a puzzle, like it should. It's not falling apart. God knows what is going on. It's falling into place according to his will. And, you know, for us, that should be a comfort. You know, that we don't have to worry about that. He's going to take care of us, right? At the end of the day, we're in his will, not the will of the evil one, right? So we should take comfort into that. God ordained the future. Like I said, he knows what's going to happen in the future. He's ordained it. It's his will. There's nothing the enemy can do to thwart God's plan, is there? Because he's ordained it. He's the one that's in control of the future. Are we, you know, sometimes I've said it before, right now we're losing the battle. You know, all the things that are going on in the world today that we see with the transgender and the homosexuality and the drugs and we just name it. The murder rates skyrocketing. You know, Brother Guy talked about, abducting kids and taking them across and subjecting them to whatever. We think we're losing the battle, which we are, but who's going to be the victor in the end? God is going to be the victor in, right? So he's ordained the future. So let's look at Noah's perspective on things. So remember, Noah has been on the ark for months. Months, plural. How long was Noah on the ark? Keep adding. Keep adding. Yeah, so a little over a year. A little over a year he's been on the ark. A long time. You know, when we were, again, I said this last week, you know, we look at the scripture and it rained for 40 days and 40 nights and there it is, 40 days and 40 nights. No, it goes a lot longer than that. He's on the ark for over a year. So day after day, week after week, the ark's just been floating around with no end in sight. Does Noah have any clue as to when he's getting off this ark? He doesn't, right? He's just following who? God, right? From his perspective. So Noah has no idea how long his journey is going to be on the ark. Doesn't have an idea yet. And I'm sure Miss Noah and his daughters-in-laws are in his ears. Never the sons, right? They're just like, Dad, you got this. But old Miss Noah, she's just barking at him all the time, I'm sure. And the daughters-in-law, they're barking at him. Poor old Noah. He's in there with 4 women. Man, it's got to be tough. I mean, I lived in a house with 4 women, my wife and my 3 daughters. And I was outnumbered. Plus, we had a female dog. So I was way outnumbered. So it's reasonable to assume he asked the question, has God forgotten me? You think he ever asked that question? You know, with someone that's in your ear, possibly, you know, barking all the time, would that just you know, constant? We don't know if that's what happened or not. But do you think that ever came up in their conversation? It may have. We don't know, right? We're not told. Has God abandoned us? Man, we've been floating on this ark for who knows long. Can't look outside. It's dark, you know, all the time, because I'm sure with all the volcanic activity going on, with the storms going on, and the tsunamis, and the sky's just dark from all the ash up in the air. It's just, you know, we don't know what's going on. Man, it's just bad. We're just bouncing around in the ark, floating around. But at the right time, God encouraged Noah. At the right time, and God remembered Noah. And Noah came to the realization that God had not forgotten me. And God knows exactly where I am. And I'm sure that God, however he chose to speak to Noah, whether it was in his heart or verbally, I don't know. But I'm sure at this time, you know, Noah was encouraged that, hey, we're going to make it. We're going to make it through here. So it was God who told me to build the ark from Noah's perspective, right? God told me to build that ark. It was God who told me to get on the ark, wasn't it? It was God who sealed the ark, wasn't it? God did what? He closed the door. So God, at this, you know, did all these things for Noah. It was God who wills at the right time to get off the ark. And the key word there is the right time. And we're going to see that in a few verses. And we're going to see the patience of Noah. And, you know, when I was looking at this, reading this, going, man, how patient can you be? You've been floating on this thing forever, and you send out some bird. Well, I'm jumping ahead of myself. I'm not going to do that tonight. We're just going to have to see. It was God who told the wind to blow and the fountains and the rains to stop. So in the scripture, I don't know if I read this, but God was the one that, and we did read it. God stopped the fountains of the great deep. He stopped all that. He stopped the rain. And then he created a wind to start blowing all the waters off the land. And, you know, back in Genesis 1, we read about, you know, in the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth, the Spirit of God was doing what over the waters? He was hovering over the waters, right? And I kind of vision that here, where God is now hovering over the waters because the earth is completely underwater again, right? And he's hovering over the waters, and now he's going to start blowing the waters off the land back to where it needs to go, into the oceans and rivers. So what an encouragement is to know that God knows exactly where you are and what you need. You know, we should take that in our daily life, because we should be encouraged that God knows us intimately, right? It doesn't matter what's going on in your life. Whether you have money problems, we've all been there. You know, in our youth, especially in our youth, you know, there was, when you got married, you had those money issues, you know, and we've all been there with money problems, health issues. We've all been there. Kid problems. For those that have kids, 3 of them. We've all had problems in our life. So no matter what it is in our life, we know this: God remembers, and you put your name there, right? And that's kind of encouragement, is that with all the things that are going on with Noah on the ark, and God remembers Noah, we can be encouraged that God remembers Greg Russell right here. Keep in mind your perspective and God's perspective. If you get caught up in your perspective as woe is me, look at me, I've got all these problems, but that's not going to get you anywhere. But when you look at it from God's perspective, He's got a plan. We already see that in Noah, right? He's got a plan for Noah. So God knows everything about us, doesn't He? In fact, He knows the number of hairs on your head. I wish Jim was here tonight, so we could count those hairs on his head, not a whole lot. But I can see Justin over there with a head full. He knows the amount of hairs on your head. He knows every detail about you, doesn't He? Everything about you. He knows how many blood cells you have, your fingerprint makeup, everything about you. He knows, because He's the what? He's the Creator. God knows every word you will say even before you say it. That kind of puts things in perspective, doesn't it? So the next time you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off and you go, "You big dummy," he already knew you were going to say it, didn't He? So I guess it's better not to say it. You might think it, though. But He knows your thoughts too, doesn't He? God has appointed the number of days that you'll be here on this earth. He already knows that about you. So who's in control here? Are you in control at all? From your perspective, are you in control? I got this. I'm the man. Oh yeah, I don't need you, God. I got this. I can do it. No. Can you control the days you're going to be on this earth? No, you can't. God's already have a plan for that. It might be tonight. It might be next year. We don't know, do we? But He's in control. So God has already mapped out His perfect will for your life and my life. So that, when I look at the perspectives, either man's perspective or Noah's perspective, my perspective, or God's perspective, He knows a lot more about my life than I do. And we should be encouraged about that He's in control, and that we can give it up to Him. Shouldn't we? We should. So God remembers, and you put your name in here. I get pretty excited about that. When I did this thing with these hunters that night, when we get in dark times, just like Noah, God remembered Noah. God remembers Greg Russell. So even I'm going through my darkest hours and my darkest times, God remembers Greg Russell, or whomever it be, right? He remembers. He's never forgotten me. He's never going to forsake me. He's always going to be truthful. He's always going to be there. Isn't that encouraging? It should be.
That means that God already knows what we're going to do, but He don't make us do it.
That's right. We have will. We have free will. That's right. And, Clarence, that's a good, I didn't put that in here, but did God say, He said, don't eat of that tree, right? He gave us freedom, but what happened? Adam made a bad choice, didn't he? All of us have free will. And now I'm stepping into a whole another realm of theology, which I don't want to get into that for any Calvinist out there. So God is in control. He's always in control. God has a master plan. And God has a purpose for our life. And God has perfect timing for everything to work out in our lives. Sometimes we want to get out in front of that, don't we? I catch myself doing that. Oh, I can do this. I got this handled. Let me take care of that for you. And we should be patient and wait on God. But if you're honest with yourself, we all get out in front of God a little bit. So God also remembered the animals too. He cares for the animals. Because back in that verse, it said he remembered Noah, and then what? He remembered all the animals on the ark. So in Matthew 10:29, are not 2 sparrows sold for a copper coin, and not one of them falls to the ground apart from your Father's will? So he cares about the animals as well. Right? He does. I mean, it's right here in the Bible. God cares for the animals. So, but God remembered Noah and the wild animals and the livestock that were in the ark, with him in the ark, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. So I want to take this little piece here. I already talked about it a little bit, but I want to expand on, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. So let's look at that. All weather is under the sovereignty hand of God. So we don't have to worry about global warming. We don't have to, right? Because God is in control of what? He's in control of the weather too. And we're going to see that at the very end of this chapter again. So Genesis 8:4, and on the 17th day of the 17th month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. So I want to pause right here. I didn't put this in the slide. The mountains of Ararat. How many of you have ever heard or read they finally found Noah's Ark? All the time. And they found it where? In Turkey, right? And specifically, let me drill in a little bit closer. Where did they find it in Turkey? On Ararat. But that's not what the Bible says here, is it? It's the mountains, plural, of Ararat. So they always kind of say, we found the ark on Mount Ararat. Oh, there is a Mount Ararat, but there's mountains of Ararat. So it's like a chain of mountains. And, I don't think they found the ark yet because there's only been like 900 discovered. I'm just making that number up. It seems like every year they found the ark. Amazing. And it's always in a different place. They got aerial photos and look, we got a piece of wood that we found, and it's amazing. So I just threw that in there for fun giggles. But on the 17th day of the 17th month, interesting. So why did Moses give us an exact day? What's he trying to say here? Any clue? Well, close, but I'm going to tell you why here. It is because he wants us to know this is not an allegory. This is a real time in history. In fact, when you look at some of the other people, like I'll use Hank Hanegraaff, for example. He uses a device, I forgot what they call it now, but how he explains the creation of the world. So we know biblically it took 6 literal days, right? And we all went through that months ago, right? A day. But he says day 1 and day 3 are together, and day 2 and day 4 together. And he says, and I wish I would have brought up some quotes from him, but he says that this passage in Genesis, in fact, a lot of Genesis is poetic. And I'm like, interesting that Moses gives us an exact day and time. It's not poetic. It's a statement of what? Fact, right? It's not an allegory. So when you look at, can anybody look at the definition of an allegory in your phone? Someone? Justin? You're working on it. You want me to spell it for you? Okay. Tell us what an allegory is.
A story, poem, or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral or political one.
Yeah. So all that kind of goes out. It's not an allegory. It's not poetic. This is a real time with exact dates. In fact, you know, when the flood started, what did Moses give us then? He gave us exact dates when the rain started, right? Now, he's giving us more dates. So, plus, from this, we can draw a timeline of how long Noah's been on the ark. So this is not an allegory. These are real events in real time and space. These things actually happen in history. That's why Moses gave us an exact day. Why do you think God let the ark rest on the mountains of Ararat? You ever thought about that? Why didn't it happen that he didn't just plop it down in Red Banks, Mississippi? Okay. Well, the mountains are about 14,000 feet above sea level. God really did flood the earth. So how can you refute that? Because there are some of those skeptics out there that said he didn't flood the whole earth. He only flooded a portion of the earth. You know, and he built a wall around the waters to keep it from, because water always sinks level or finds level. It always wants to go down. It never climbs up. It always goes down and finds level. So with this, we know that if the mountains, if the ark landed up here on top of Ararat, and that was the first thing to dry out, right? And we're going to find that out here because he's going to let some birds out here in a while. So kind of gives us a real, yeah, God did flood the earth because the ark landed on top of the mountains, or on top or somewhere close to the top, all right? 14,000 feet above sea level because the water hadn't receded yet all the way. We're going to find that out. So in Genesis 8:5, the waters continued to recede until the 10th month. And on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. So there you go. If the ark landed up here on the mountains, that means the waters are still down there. They can't get out yet, can they? So God really did what? Flood the earth. Seems pretty logical. What else do you see here in Genesis 8:5? You see some more. The 10th month and the first day in the 10th month. So Moses is telling you, once again, this is not an allegory. This is a real thing that happened. Right? He's given us real dates. So after 40 days, Noah opened a window that he had made in the ark and sent out a raven, and it kept flying back and forth until the water had dried up from the earth. Then he sent out a dove to see if the water had receded from the surface of the ground. But the dove could not find nowhere to perch because there was water over all the surface of the earth. So it returned to the ark, to Noah in the ark. He reached out his hand and took the dove and brought it back to himself in the ark. Now, I read multiple commentaries on this part right here, and I just wasn't satisfied. You know, I read all these commentaries about the raven and what does that symbolize, and the dove, what does it symbolize? And I was like, my head's going to explode. I just can't take anymore. Maybe you have some commentary on this that you would like to share with me. I don't have much commentary here, other than he sent out a raven, which the raven flew to and forth and it never came back. And probably the raven found a place to land because there were dead animals everywhere, I'm sure, floating on the water. And a raven is a scavenger. And he was in high heaven, so to speak. The dove, on the other hand, flew back and forth, couldn't find a place to land, and came back to the ark. Noah reached out his arm, the dove came in, and then we're going to see that he waited. Here's the key word. He waited, or key phrase, he waited 7 more days, and again sent out the dove from the ark. When the dove returned to him in the evening, there in its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. Then Noah knew that the water had receded from the earth. So keep in mind this key little 2 words here. He waited. In fact, I want to go back here. All right. So now, I want you to pay attention. After 40 days, Noah opened the window. So all the things that were going on with this flood event quit. They stopped. He waited 40 days. 40 days, that's over a month. With the wife and the daughters-in-laws just barking at him. Son-in-laws were pretty cool about everything. They were like, Dad, come on, man. But Noah waited 40 days. And then he waited again 7 more days after he sent out those birds. And then he waited 7 more days and sent out the dove again, but this time it did not return to him. So 40, he waited 7, he waited 7. By the first day of the first month of Noah's 601st year, that's the age of Noah now. He's 601 years old. Just a young guy, because Noah lived to about 900 and something years old. The water had dried up from the earth. So, what are we seeing about old Noah here? Because some more time went by here on the first day of the first month. What are we seeing about old Noah here? Patience, right? Who was he waiting on? He's waiting on God, right? Do you think you would be going, heck fire, let's get off this boat right now? I know my wife would be just like, open that door, get out there. Hurry up, plant a garden, build me a swing out there in the backyard. I hope she's not listening. But she would have a project list for me like this long, I assure you. Because I've got one about this long right now at the house. But Noah was patient. He was what? He was waiting on God. So by the 27th day of the second month, the earth was completely dry. So the 27th day of the second month, hang on a minute, let me go back here. The first day of the first month, so now we got another, how long? First day of the first month, and now we got by the 27th day of the second month, so we're almost another 2 months in, aren't we? Would you be that patient again? You'd be wanting to get off the ark, wouldn't you? So the earth was completely dry. And how did the earth dry? From God. That's right. So Noah's waiting on God to say, come off the ark, isn't he? Uh-oh, I hope that wasn't her texting me. But so he was patient. So Noah wasn't getting ahead of God, was he? He was doing exactly what God had told him to do. You stay on here until I'm ready for you to come out of the ark. Like I said earlier, I asked the question, I would be wanting to get off that ark so fast. I've been on it almost a little over a year now. Oh, well, coming up to a year at this point. Over a year, with all those animals and that nagging daughters-in-laws. I mean, come on, man. You'd be wanting to get off the ark, wouldn't you? I would. So he was waiting on God. Oh, sorry about that. So can you imagine the excitement Noah had when he looked out and saw dry land? Can you imagine? He's been cooped up in the ark, all the animals, nothing to do. I mean, I know he had lots to do. He had to feed, he had to gather water, he had to dispose of waste somehow from the animals. I'm sure there was a lot of work to be done with several thousand animals on that ark. But, when he opened the window in the top of the boat and looked out, and notice it wasn't the door of the ark, was it, that he looked out? Because God sealed the door, didn't he? He looked out a window that was in the top of the ark, and he saw that dry land. Can you imagine how excited he was? We made it. We made it. Man, I can't fathom what was going on in his head and his family. I'm sure that they were just overjoyed. We made it. We're gonna get off this thing. Over a year-long span. Unbelievable. So it kind of makes you wonder, how much patience do you have? I'm a pretty patient guy. I can tell you, I am. That's one of the things my daddy instilled in me, is to be patient. But I don't know if I could have been that patient. I don't know if I could have been. Or maybe you don't have time for patience. I don't know. So a virtue of Christ-likeness is patience. Did you know that? In fact, Galatians 5:22, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, right there. Patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. So these are all attributes of Christ-likeness. And he was patient, and we should be patient. All right? If we strive to be like Christ, that's one of them, is patience. And, how patient are we when we're going to the store and that guy in front of us in the car, that red light changes to green and he's still sitting there. What are you doing? Honking your horn or going, come on, you big dingus, go on, go, get. You just want to push your foot on the gas and go bump them, don't you? I do sometimes. But, wow, it kind of tests your patience a little bit. So, Noah, though, how patient was he? Wow. So our tendency is to get ahead of God. We all do it. If you're honest with yourself, we all try to get in front of God and, I got this, I got control. My timing, yeah, it's my timing, not his. So reading on, then God spoke to Noah, saying, go out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and your son's wife with you. Yeah, that was my wife texting me. That's too funny. She said, patience, I am. That's too good. So God spoke to Noah saying, go out of the ark. So now he's getting the command from God, go out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and the sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing of all flesh that is with you, birds and cattle and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, so that they may abound on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So now Noah's getting the command from God, come on out, bring everything that's on the ark out with you. Empty the ark. So God now instructs every living thing to multiply and fill the earth. Right? So he's telling all the animals, plus he's telling mankind at this point, you got to repopulate the earth. So Noah went out, and his sons and his wives and his sons' wives with him, every animal, every creeping thing, every bird, and whatever creeps on the earth, according to the families, went out of the ark. What a dramatic moment. Can you imagine the big parade coming out? You know, there's like a grand parade, pair by pair, came marching out of the ark. Think the animals wanted to get off? I bet they were just excited as Noah. You know, but what a grand, dramatic moment. I mean, we made it. The floods came, the tsunamis came, the tornadoes came, the volcanoes came, meteor showers, you name it. God put it on the earth, and we made it. And now here's the grand parade of everybody, everything coming off the ark. What a day. What a day. So the priority of Noah. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took every clean animal and of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. So underline the word then. What implications does that word have to you? Then.
That's when it happened.
I'm sorry?
That's when it happened. Say then.
Yeah.
Well, it did everything else it needed to do to get off the ark.
And then, right? So let's look at some of those Then Noah, it was immediate. I mean, they came off the ark. That implication of then was almost like immediate, right? That could be an implication right there. It was immediate. Then Noah made an altar. Immediately, he made an altar. What else? It was a priority for Noah. God didn't have to tell him that. It was a priority. He wanted to praise God. He wanted to give God the glory for this, didn't he? Without hesitation. He didn't go, well, I'll get to it next week, God. You know, I've got a list from Miss Noah, and I've got to go over here and build a vineyard. I got to get a house going. I got to get a fire going too over here. No, without hesitation, he built an altar and started a sacrifice, didn't he? That's some of the implications of that word then. Then Noah. So Noah had church right there, the first church after the flood. You know, what is church to you? Is it just a building? Is it a gathering? What is it? What's the one word you can say about church? Yeah, I know. It starts with a W. It's worship, right? So this is the first church. Noah, right here, first church, right after the flood. Noah had church right there because he built an altar to God and he started praising God. He started worshiping God. Now, we're going to get all hung up in this in several chapters when something happens to old Noah. We know what we're talking about, and I'm going to expand on that a little bit, but that's what most people do. Well, Noah came through this, and then, you read the next chapter. Well, everybody's got their flaws, right? We'll talk about that, though. So Noah had church right there. Seek first the kingdom of God. And that's what Noah did right there. Right? What's the rest of that verse? That's right. So that should be an example to all of us, is that we need to have church. It could be just by yourself, in your quiet time or your study time or whatever. But that should be an example that we need to be worshiping God. In fact, I have a few slides that I added on this afternoon because I thought it was really appropriate, because it hit me like a ton of bricks the other night when I was prepared. I wrapped this up Thursday. Yeah, Thursday. And I'm like, man, something's just not complete here. And I had a little bit more time, and I think God laid this on me, but you'll see in the last couple of slides. But this should be an example to all of us about having or worshiping God for what He's done for us. So job number 1 is we will worship God. That's what Noah and his family did the day they got off the ark. That was job priority number 1, is we're going to worship God. And the Lord smelled a soothing aroma. Then the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground for man's sake, although the imagination of a man's heart is evil from his youth. Nor will I again destroy every living thing as I have done. When you read this passage here, what kind of sticks out to you is like, hang on a minute, why did God put that in there when most of this passage is talking about the same thing, and then there's this one blurb in here that just kind of sticks out? Do you see it? Yeah. So what does the first part say? He's talking about he smelled the aroma, the burnt offering, right? Then the Lord said in his heart, I will never curse the ground for man's sake. So he states it. He says, I'm never going to curse the ground. Then you jump on down a little bit. He says, nor will I again destroy every living thing as I have done. So he's talking about cursing the ground and destroying the earth again. But there's this one phrase in here that kind of sticks out in here and says, although the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. It's almost like, does that belong in there or not? Do you see that? It kind of stuck out to me, but I want to talk about that little phrase there, although the imagination of man's heart is evil in his youth. So what Noah did was pleasing to God. We saw that God smelled the aroma and it pleased him because God had prescribed this. Think back to Cain and Abel. Abel's offering was pleasing to God. Why was that? Why wasn't Cain's offering pleasing to God?
Cain's offering was from his garden.
Yeah.
And Abel's was his herd, I guess.
That?
In some place it says, without the shedding of blood,
There's no...
remission of sin.
That's correct. So, back then, God had, I believe, passed on to the boys that there had to be an animal sacrifice. And, Abel's offering was sacrificial, and Cain's was, from his harvest, right? So God prescribed this. Way back there in the garden, God had prescribed an animal sacrifice. And that's what Noah is doing here. He's doing an animal sacrifice. So God had no remorse for what he had done to the earth. He had no remorse, right? Why? Because God is holy. He's a holy God. He can do whatever he wants to. His judgment is holy and his will is holy. God had a perfect plan. Perfect plan. From day one, perfect plan. Man messed it up. And God is dealing with it. He dealt with it during the flood, didn't he? So here's that phrase, although the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. This phrase underscores God's undeserved grace and mercy upon the human race to allow it to live and function. So God knows that just because it's Noah and his sons and his daughters-in-law, he knows that sin is still what? It's still around. It ain't going to get any better. He knows, looking down the future, it's going to get just like it is, because I said we're living in the days of Noah right now, again. So I believe that this underscores God's undeserved grace and mercy. So God knew it was going to happen, and he said it right there, it's going to happen. Because man is still what? Evil. And God is, did you have a question?
No, I was going to say the way that it's written, I think it stands out to me in a way of a reminder in the midst of this promise.
Yeah.
The way it's written, it's a constant reminder in the midst of this promise.
Good.
Smite the world again, but
Yeah, exactly.
we are evil.
Yep, we're still evil. We're always going to be evil. But God has what? Grace and mercy for us. Right? So I believe that's what I believe about this little passage right here, is that he's talking about his grace and mercy. Even though man's evil, I'm not going to curse it again. I'm not going to destroy it again. I've got another plan, and that's Jesus. And then he said in that same passage, will I again destroy every living thing as I have done? That was in that passage, right? Let's remember that the one sin Adam committed brought the death penalty to the human race. Here's the question, though. How long suffering has God been even to the days of Noah? So God made a perfect earth. Man messed it all up. And for almost 2,000 years now, how long suffering has God been? Very long suffering. And, when we say the days of Noah, what was the days of Noah like? He talked about it. What did God say about the days of Noah? That evil was continually on man's thoughts and mind, right? Evil, constantly, evil, evil, evil. But God has been long-suffering, and you think God's long-suffering today? Absolutely He is. Absolutely. When you look at the things that are going on, He is long-suffering. But like I said, in that quote with Jan Markell, the world is not falling apart, it's falling into place. And He's long-suffering. The last part of that chapter 8, while the earth remains seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease. That's the last part of chapter 8. What do you see from here? Well, the earth remains. So God created the earth, right? He put it in the right place, the right distance from the sun, with the right tilt of angle, the right rotation, the right moon, the right distance of the moon for us. He put all that into place so the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat. So he's talking about what? Summer and winter, isn't he? Winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease. Here's the bottom line with that is God is in control, not man. There's nothing we can do to, with all the global warming and the climate change, and there's nothing we can control about all that. I don't care how many cows are out there, with all the... I'm not going to even go there, but we know it doesn't matter. God is in control of the earth. He's in control of the climate. We can't change summer and winter. He's in complete control of the climate. So, we see the assurance God gave Noah in chapter 8. However he told Noah, how he used that to communicate to Noah about he remembered him, and it's time for you, Noah, to get off the ark. All the stuff that we see, the God's long suffering, and he brought Noah through all the storms. He was assured by God, right? So what's our takeaway? What's our lesson? What's our assurance? What is our assurance? Well, here's mine. And I think that's probably the best assurance that we have, is because he lives, I can face tomorrow. And, what a great assurance is that no matter what happens in this world, I know that this is real, right? Because he lives. And I can face tomorrow. So, I made it through. Now, I do want to show you guys. Oh, please be there. Yeah. So, this is a timeline of Noah and the ark. And I'm right on time. So we can see by the timeline, and it kind of gives a description of what is going on. And this is at Answers in Genesis. But 370 days, the earth was dry, and so the earth was dry, and God commanded Noah and his family to get off the ark. So he was over a year on the ark. And we can look at all the things that are going on through the description here and see what was going on or how many days. So right here, when he sent out the dove, here's the raven. He had been on the ark 271 days, up to 370, so almost 100 days. 100 days, the patience of Noah, waiting on God. 100 days, that's a long time, isn't it? And you start to see, the earth again. So I thought this was a really cool chart. Again, this is on Answers in Genesis. If you just look at, search it on Answers in Genesis, just search for the timeline of the flood, and you can see this chart in here. Any questions? So now that we have Noah off the ark, now we can start talking about what happens, what are the results of the flood? The fossilization, coal, oil, all these things that we see today. I sit at the train here for about 5 minutes today before I got to church. And I just counted, well, I didn't count, but it was coal, car after car after car after car. One of the guys I play golf with is he's a lobbyist for the railroad. So he goes and talks to the congressmen and the senators about, his railroad that he works for. And he was telling me one time, he said, we call that the money train, because that's where, they're pushing lots of coal, and there's a lot of money on, in those cars. But I'm going to ask him how many cars go by on these tracks every day. It's a bunch. It's a bunch. So I can't wait to get to that when we start talking about the results of the flood. So, any questions tonight? None? Y'all are an easy crowd.
Well, I got a comment.
Okay.
Even though God knows who's gonna be president, I think we should still pray.
Oh,
The ones we think follows God's will the closest.
right. No, you're 100% right. What's Brother Guy been talking about on Wednesday night? In the last couple of Wednesdays about the model prayer, right? And whose prayer for? Us, right? And we should pray. That's right. So, any other comments?
When Noah let the birds out, was the ark still moving, or is it kind of?
We don't know. We don't know. I think the mountains became visible. That's really all it says, We don't know if the ark was still floating along at this time. Some of the things we just don't know yet. We can make assumptions, but we don't know.
Okay, when we say prayer changes things,
Yeah.
I mean, it changes us too, but do you think? Because I've read someplace in the Bible where it says God relented.
Or God changed his mind.
Right.
I'm going to let Justin answer that one. He's been to seminary and I haven't. I don't think God doesn't change. He's this, right?
Well, it doesn't change his character and who he is. Doesn't say that he can't change what he's gonna do.
That's why I wanted you to answer that one, not me. Clarence, don't ever get me there. All right, since you were talking, Clarence, I'm going to have you lead us out, and then we're gone.